What if there was a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, that's what we've got. You're listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
Welcome to episode 9 of the C&C Talks podcast.
Just a reminder, we release every Tuesday. Actually, today is, I believe, we're releasing on Wednesday.
Yep.
All right. And we tape a day release. So it's currently Tuesday, July 5th. Happy late 4th of July, everyone, by the way, if you're from the U.S. And let's get right into it. It's about 12 p.m. Pacific time. And actually, we have a huge announcement for our podcast. Colin?
Yeah. So we're introducing C&C Talks After Hours, where we will release short bonus content on Twitter and YouTube when events warrant.
So just a little bit more of an explanation. When large events happen or things that need a little bit more of an in-depth explanation, you can find our content. We explore concepts in depth. I know that we mentioned some things that I don't know if any or very few of our audience understand. So we'll be going more into depth. So hopefully people can more understand the world of not only politics and sports, but also just more of the general world around them. So let's get to politics, Colin, shall we?
Yeah, and we're going to start with a blockbuster January 6th hearing that took place this past Tuesday. Cassidy Hutchinson was the witness. Charlie, how about you tell us more about Hutchinson?
Okay, yeah. Hutchinson was a top aide to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Her office was about 5 seconds away from the Oval Office. She is currently 25. Her testimony on January 2nd, Mark Meadows said that things might get really, really bad on January 6th. He knew things could get ugly, but he didn't really do anything about it.
Yeah, which definitely, first of all, it implies that stuff may have been planned, and also that, there was just a failure at the White House to actually do anything. People who attended Trump's speech on January 6th were armed, as we learned here. Let's play this clip.
Of course, the world now knows that the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th had many different types of weapons. When a president speaks, the Secret Service typically requires those attending to pass through metal detectors, known as magnetometers, or MAGs for short. The Select Committee has learned that people who willingly entered the enclosed area for President Trump's speech were screened so they could attend the rally at the Ellipse. They had weapons and other items that were confiscated: pepper spray, knives, brass knuckles, tasers, body armor, gas masks, batons, blunt weapons. And those were just from the people who chose to go through the security for the president's event on the Ellipse, not the several thousand members of the crowd who refused to go through the MAGs and watched from the lawn near the Washington Monument. The Select Committee has learned about reports from outside the magnetometers and has obtained police radio transmissions identifying individuals with firearms, including AR-15s, near the Ellipse on the morning of January 6th.
Well, Charlie, that's really something there, because that refutes the GOP's claim that it was not armed.
Yes, and it also shows that this wasn't really just a protest. People were planning for violence that day.
Yeah. Let's also move on to Trump. He wanted people with weapons allowed inside the screaming area because he wanted it to look like there were more people there, because obviously we know he's super insecure about crowd size. We all remember what happened at his inauguration. And he didn't want those people to have their weapons confiscated, and you can see by this very disturbing clip.
When we were in the offstage announce area tent behind the stage, he was very concerned about the shot, meaning the photograph that we would get, because the rally space wasn't full. One of the reasons, which I've previously stated, was because he wanted it to be full and for people to not feel excluded because they'd come far to watch him at the rally, and he felt the MAGs were at fault for not letting everybody in. But another leading reason, and likely the primary reason, is because he wanted it full and he was angry at that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deems as weapons and our weapons. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in.
Well, holy crap on that one, Charlie.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
I mean, right? Like, he knew that they were going to march from the Capitol to there, and he wanted them to be armed at the Capitol.
That's concerning, right? Yes.
I mean, right? If that has seditious conspiracy written all over it.
It does.
Yeah. Moving on, Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff, was very unconcerned by reports of violence at the Capitol. Also, Trump wanted to walk with his armed supporters to the Capitol, something that the White House counsel's office was very concerned about. We have a clip of that.
Did you have any conversations with Pat Cipollone about his concerns about the president going to the Capitol on January 6th?
On January 3rd, Mr. Cipollone had approached me, knowing that Mark had raised the prospect of going up to the Capitol on January 6th. Mr. Cipollone and I had a brief private conversation where he said to me, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. This would be legally a terrible idea for us. We have serious legal concerns if we go up to the Capitol that day. And he then urged me to continue relaying that to Mr. Meadows, because it's my understanding that Mr. Cipollone thought that Mr. Meadows was indeed pushing this along with the president.
And we understand, Ms. Hutchinson, that you also spoke to Mr. Cipollone on the morning of the 6th as you were about to go to the rally on the Ellipse. And Mr. Cipollone said something to you like, make sure the movement to the Capitol does not happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. I saw Mr. Cipollone right before I walked out onto West Exec that morning, and Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen.
And do you remember which crimes Mr. Cipollone was concerned with?
In the days leading up to the 6th, we had conversations about potentially obstructing justice or defrauding the electoral count.
Well, yeah, that definitely implies some guilt there, Charlie.
It does. Also, the Secret Service were unable to find a safe way for him to go to the Capitol, and Trump was very upset that he was not able to go. We actually have another clip of that.
Ms. Hutchinson, when you returned to the White House in the motorcade after the president's speech, where did you go?
When I returned to the White House, I walked upstairs towards the Chief of Staff's office, and I noticed Mr. Ornato lingering outside of the office. Once we had made eye contact, he quickly waved me to go into his office, which was just across the hall from mine. When I went in, he shut the door, and I noticed Bobby Engel, who is the head of Mr. Trump's security detail, sitting in a chair, just looking somewhat discombobulated and a little lost. And I looked at Tony, and he had said, "Did you effing hear what happened in the Beast?" I said, "No, Tony, I just got back. What happened?" Tony proceeded to tell me that when the president got in the Beast, he was under the impression from Mr. Meadows that the off-the-record movement to the Capitol was still possible and likely to happen, but that Bobby had more information. So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, "We're not, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing," the president had a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Well,
it seems like these just keep getting worse.
100% agree. And on that, we actually have more about Trump's reaction when former Attorney General Bill Barr said that there was no fraud in an AP interview.
And we're just getting started.
I'm very angry about issues relating to the election. On December 1, 2020, Attorney General Barr said in an interview that the Department of Justice had not found evidence of widespread election fraud sufficient to change the outcome of the election. Ms. Hutchinson, how did the President react to hearing that news?
Around the time that I understand the AP article went live, I remember hearing noise coming from down the hallway, so I poked my head out of the office, and I saw the valet walking towards our office. He had said, "Get the chief down to the dining room, the president wants him." So Mark went down to the dining room and came back to the office a few minutes later. After Mark had returned, I left the office and went down to the dining room, and I noticed that the door was propped open and the valet was inside the dining room changing the tablecloth off of the dining room table. He motioned for me to come in and then pointed towards the front of the room near the fireplace mantel and the TV, where I first noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall and there's a shattered porcelain plate on the floor. The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at wiping the ketchup off of the wall to help the valet out. And he said something to the effect of, "He's really ticked off about this. I would stay clear of him for right now. He's really, really ticked off about this right now."
And Ms. Hutchinson, was this the only instance that you are aware of where the president threw dishes?
It's not.
And are there other instances in the dining room that you recall where he expressed his anger?
There were several times throughout my tenure with the Chief of Staff that I was aware of him either throwing dishes or flipping the tablecloth to let all the contents of the table go onto the floor and likely break or go everywhere.
And Ms. Hutchinson, Attorney General Barr described to the committee the president's angry reaction when he finally met with President Trump. Let's listen.
And I said, "Look, I know that you're dissatisfied with me, and I'm glad to offer my resignation." And he pounded the table very hard. Everyone sort of jumped, and he said, "Accept it."
Okay, well, wow. I mean, really, we are looking at a president that's kind of a baby, honestly. That's really what it is.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
To the word.
Yeah.
So for our final clip, we have something interesting for you. Colin, can we get a little bit more about what this clip's about?
Yeah, so it's about Michael Flynn, former national security advisor, who pled guilty to lying to the FBI and was later pardoned by Trump, taking the fifth about several things that are very interesting. Let's play that for you now.
Let's briefly view a clip of General Mike Flynn taking the Fifth Amendment. General Flynn, do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified?
Do we have a minute?
Yes.
All right, we're back. Congressman Cheney, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. General Flynn, do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified?
Can I get a clarification? Is that a moral question or are you asking a legal question?
I'm asking both.
said the Fifth.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified morally?
Take the Fifth.
You believe the violence on January 6th was justified legally?
Fifth.
General Flynn, do you believe in the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America?
The Fifth.
Okay, well, I mean, right, Fifth Amendment implies some guilt, and that's definitely problematic, right? When you're pleading guilty to the peaceful transfer of power in America.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, remember, that's a former general.
Yes, and that's concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, it again shows he should be nowhere near power ever, right?
Yes.
He is completely anti-American, right?
Yes.
So, Meadows also told Hutchinson that Trump thought that Mike Pence actually deserved to be hung, which, don't see any problematic things about that one.
Trump wanted to pardon the rioters at the Capitol.
Yeah, did not end up
Giuliani and
happening.
Meadows also sought pardons for their actions, and the committee has evidence of people close to Trump trying to tamper with witnesses.
Yeah.
Which is illegal, I think.
Yeah, also,
probably.
Former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, he has been subpoenaed now by the January 6th committee. He had been working on a deal to testify publicly, but he stalled for too long, so he's now been given a subpoena, which is worse. Now, let's move on to some funny but ultimately irrelevant news.
Yes. Rudy Giuliani was assaulted. He was hit on the back by an employee at a grocery store on Staten Island. He was campaigning for his son, Andrew Giuliani, who was running for governor of New York. Giuliani lost the primary this week. The worker also called him a scumbag. The hit on the back was more of a pat, but it still qualifies as assault. But he claimed it was much worse than it actually was, and actually we have a clip of that.
Yep.
He hit me hard enough to knock me forward about like this. You know elderly people die mostly from falls? This guy could have killed me.
I got hit on the back as if a boulder hit me. It knocked me forward a step or two.
All of a sudden, I feel a shot on my back, like somebody shot me.
You know, that was the woman who was rubbing my back. The guy hit me so hard that she herself almost fell from the reverberation.
All right, I mean that feels like a very Rudy thing, right?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Well, I mean, and the way that he kept changing the story also. Mayor Eric Adams of New York City actually suggested possible criminal charges for Giuliani for falsely reporting a crime because, this person, for pretty much patting him on the back, he had to spend a night in jail, which is just wrong.
Yep. Speaking of jail, we have some recent jail sentences. Colin, can we get some more on that?
Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell, sentenced to 20 years in prison. She is the Jeffrey Epstein associate who was convicted of trafficking minors for Epstein to rape. Lev Parnas, former Rudy Giuliani associate, sentenced to 20 months in prison, convicted of, I believe, campaign finance violations. And singer R. Kelly, sentenced to 30 years in prison for convicted of sex trafficking and racketeering. But let's move on to some much more joyous news, Charlie.
Yes, Ketanji Brown Jackson was sworn in as a Supreme Court justice. She replaces the retiring Stephen Breyer. And actually, Breyer was appointed by Bill Clinton back in the 90s.
Yeah, I believe 1994.
This was confirmed by the Senate in a 53-47 vote in April after some hearings.
Very contentious hearings.
Yes. The only Republicans that voted for her were Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, and Lisa Murkowski.
Yeah.
She is actually very historically qualified, however. She's worked as a district court judge, appeals court judge, public defender, and a public defender on the Sentencing Commission.
Yeah, and arguably one of the most qualified Supreme Court justices in history. And also the first black woman justice in history. So that's a momentous occasion, obviously.
Yes, and it comes at a time where the court has taken a fairly sharp right turn. This court has also been viewed as illegitimate by more than 2/3 of the country.
which is not good.
Last 2 weeks, they've made some big moves to make gun ownership easier, blurred the lines beteen church and state, and overturned abortion rights.
Yeah, and not to mention also severely diminishing the power that the EPA has to regulate.
Yes.
Some more joyous stuff. Joe Biden has awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to 17 people. That is an award given out by the president to celebrate Americans who have done extraordinary things. Charlie, tell us about a few of those people.
Yes, Gabby Gilford was a former congresswoman. She was shot in the head but survived, and she's an anti-gun advocate. Steve Jobs, you probably know who he is. He's the founder of Apple. Simone Biles, the most decorated American gymnast in history and mental health advocate. John McCain, who was a close friend of Biden, former senator and war hero. And Megan Rapinoe, a women's soccer star who led the movement for equal pay in sports, as well as many other people.
Yeah.
We have some interesting primaries for the Republicans. Colin, can we get some more on that?
Yeah, so there were a couple of Republican primary debates. We'll start with one in Wyoming. Liz Cheney, who is, of course, on the January 6th committee, she's being primaried by some far-right candidates due to her speaking out of January 6th. And this primary debate this past week was just an absolute disaster. Listen to it here.
We're going to go to what we call a lightning round.
January 6th
was a setup from the beginning. We cannot have actual, anyway.
What we saw happen on January 6th was clearly an attempt to delay the count of the electoral votes.
Coronavirus vaccine policy.
They knew Fauci had awards for his work in cytokines.
Mr. Fauci is one of the most corrupt individuals in Washington, D.C. We are to oppose any vaccines.
Everybody ought to get vaccinated, and we need to do everything we can to protect ourselves from future viruses.
Wyoming residents' faith in the election process.
I understand when I talked to Mike Lindell, he did say that there was a small portion of voter fraud in this state, but that is alarming.
What about Facebook using the system to steer people? We know for a fact all the major internets do that.
The 2000 Mules movie is something that I think we have great concern about.
Voting machines that are suspected fraud.
There are politicians in this country, beginning with Donald Trump, who have lied to the American people. He consistently has said that the election was stolen when it wasn't.
Ukraine is corrupt. We started it. We got involved. We pushed them into being against the Russian government.
Money laundering. I think that's the biggest ticket for the Ukrainians and the Biden administration.
It's the front line in the battle for freedom. And I think we've got to elect serious leaders.
And then there was also the Arizona Republican gubernatorial debate. Listen to that one here.
They closed my business down. But you know what? I didn't listen. I kept it open. You didn't have to listen, people. You didn't have to listen.
I'd actually like to ask everybody on this stage if they would agree we had a corrupt, stolen election. Raise your hand. Never happened.
HB 2289.
Hold on. Let her finish, please, Scott.
Okay. God, they talk over me, and I'm Italian. That shouldn't happen. You know what?
I'm Irish.
Okay. You know what? Why not get high-tech people that are going to be on the machines that are Republicans? A Democrat, Republican, get supervisors, equal amount.
That happens. We have parties looking over election results.
They're doing it now.
No,
they're actually telling people that 200,000 minimum ballots were trafficked by mules.
No,
an honest election.
May I finish? Mamma mia.
I feel like I'm on an SNL skit here. Are we going to take control of the debate?
We are taking. No, Carrie. I don't want you to try to
I'm happy to do it.
I know you would be happy to do it.
Listen, I haven't been on a stage with this many women since I've been to a baby shower. It's been a while.
I don't know how that's going to go over, Scott, but we'll let that hang. Let's talk about.
What?
Do you think Republican voters want a candidate who doesn't even believe in the vote?
I don't believe this primary has been fair. I can tell you that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have launched the lawsuit.
Our campaign is a movement. We're going to show up and vote in droves. They're going to have to cheat even harder in order to try to win this.
Your campaign's a psyop.
Paula, please.
First of all, put everything.
Paula,
I feel like this is a spoof, honestly.
Go ahead. Finish what you were saying, please.
Oh,
Is this a spoof, Ted?
No, it's not. Finish what
Are you
you're
sure?
saying. Yes, I am.
Wow. Okay.
I'm pro-life, from conception to death. And I believe...
No exceptions for rape or incest?
Well, that's a gray area. I don't know. That's a personal decision for a person.
Well, why can't we treat human life in the same way that we would treat alien life that we discovered on an alien planet?
There's a reason we don't always invite Scott, because he's polling at 0%.
No, 1%.
And this is what happens
but the polls lie.
Scott, please. And no, you can't respond to a closing statement.
The only kind of drag I've ever dressed in is a business suit or construction work clothes. I've never aspired to be Elvis Presley.
That's a shame.
All right, that's it. That's it. That's it.
All right. Well, I mean, Charlie, really, these candidates are just crazy.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it boils down to.
And to finish off politics, I wanted to add there was a 4th of July parade in Illinois, which ended in a shooting which left 24 in the hospital and 6 people dead.
Yeah.
Again. That's all I can say. Again.
Let's move on to some NATO news, Charlie.
Yes. Finland and Sweden are set to join NATO because Turkey has finally dropped their objection. They need all 30 members to agree for the deal to go through, which is likely.
Yeah. And now it's time for Charlie's Thing of the Week. What you got this week for us, Charlie?
Yes, I know that the last few weeks have been mostly like facts and information and stuff. This week it's just something that I saw that I think is funny, and I wanted to talk about it. In one Taco Bell restaurant in Irving, California, you can buy a Cheez-It tostada. It is exactly what you think it is. It's a tostada, which is a sandwich, is generally an open-faced sandwich on a massive Cheez-It cracker. I don't know what it tastes like. I imagine it tastes pretty good. But if you live in California and you live near there, I recommend you go try it. That's just that's my thing of the week this week. I don't know why I thought of this, but I did.
And Charlie, you think that would taste good? Because I think it would taste awful.
I like Cheez-Its.
Yeah, but not with Mexican food.
I don't know. All right, getting away from that, let's move on to sports.
And the ESPY Awards, they are being held in 2 weeks. Those are ESPN's annual sports awards. You can vote for the awards at ESPN.com. We'll talk about them more when we come back from our break, which will, I believe, be the day before the ESPY Awards. Let's move on now to NBA free agency. And boy, Charlie, it's been a wild ride.
Yes, it has. All right, so Kyrie Irving took a player option to return to the Nets for $36 million, followed a lengthy contract dispute with the Nets, and is likely available for a trade. The Lakers are interested, and they could be a trade for Russell Westbrook.
Yep.
Durant also wants out of Brooklyn as well. The situation with Irving has gotten out of control. Durant still has 4 years left on his contract. His top trade destinations are Miami and Phoenix, and will likely be one of the largest trades in NBA history.
Although reports do say the expected return is getting smaller by the minute. Rudy Gobert has been traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Jazz got back several first-round draft picks and a package of players including Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, Walker Kessler. If that's the return for Gobert, that suggests a very high return for Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Jalen Brunson has signed with the Knicks on a 4-year contract, $100 million. Knicks reorganized their entire roster to fit Brunson. They also look like they're about to be fined a bunch of money for tampering to hit Brunson. Nikola Jokic reaches a 5-year, $264 million extension with the Nuggets, the largest contract in NBA history, which is fitting because Jokic has won the NBA MVP the last 2 seasons.
And John Morant signs an extension with the Grizzlies, 5 years, $193 million. Morant won Most Improved Player this year and has led his team to the second-best record in the NBA.
There's a lot more. We're going to kind of run through them fairly quickly. Karl Anthony Towns signing an extension with the Timberwolves for 4 years, $224 million. Zach LaVine re-signing with the Bulls, 5 years, $215 million. Zion Williamson signing an extension with the Pelicans, 5 years, $231 million. Darius Garland signing an extension with the Cavaliers for 5 years. Bradley Beal, a 5-year extension with the Wizards that'll pretty much make him irrelevant for the next 5 years because the Wizards are unlikely to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? They might go on a run.
Who knows?
Weird
But
things have happened.
it's unlikely. Devin Booker signing a 4-year deal, an extension with the Suns. Russell Westbrook taking his $47 million player option to return to the Lakers. He may be traded to the Nets for Kyrie Irving. John Wall, a 2-year deal with the Clippers. Joseph Nurkic re-signing with the Blazers for 4 years. Then there's Miles Bridges, Charlie.
Yes, he was charged with felony domestic violence. He was arrested on the eve of free agency. He's a restricted free agent and could get a max contract.
But that seems more unlikely now, and especially
considering that he got arrested.
Yeah, and he did stuff in front of his kids. I mean, forget basketball. It's just he's a despicable human being.
Fact.
Yeah. DeJounte Murray was traded to the Hawks. He's an all-star guard, so look at that backcourt, Charlie. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wow. Spurs getting back 3 first-round draft picks and Danilo Gallinari. Kemba Walker's contract bought out by the Pistons as expected. He'll now be a free agent. Jared Jackson Jr. from Memphis. He underwent surgery. He'll probably be out till January. PJ Tucker signing with the 76ers for 3 years. Kevon Looney re-signing with the Warriors for 3 years. Hawks trading Kevin Huerter to the Kings. Andre Drummond signing with the Bulls on a 2-year deal. Gary Payton with the Blazers on a 3-year deal.
With PJ
Charlie,
Tucker,
yes?
I'm probably guessing that once Tucker's contract is up with the Sixers with this 3-year deal, I'm guessing he's probably going to retire after that.
I mean, yeah, he's 37 years old.
Yeah, he'll be 40.
Likely. Yeah, that seems likely. Otto Porter Jr. signing a 2-year deal with the Raptors. Ricky Rubio re-signing with the Cavaliers. Mitchell Robinson re-signing with the Knicks. Joe Ingles signs with the Bucks. Anthony Simons re-signs with the Blazers on a $100 million 4-year deal. Bobby Portis, a 4-year deal with the Bucks. Tyus Jones to be the backup point guard to Ja Morant. He's re-signed with the Grizzlies for 2 years. What other deals are there?
Yes. Thaddeus Young re-signed with the Raptors, 2 years, $16 million. Mo Bamba signed with the Magic, 2 years, $21 million. JaVale McGee with the Mavericks, 3 years, $20 million. He was on the Suns, is now playing with the Mavericks. Juan Toscano Anderson with the Lakers. He was on the Warriors. He didn't play many minutes during the playoff run. And Victor Oladipo re-signs with the Heat for 1 year, $11 million. Nick Claxton with the Nets, 2 years, $20 million. Lou Dort with the Thunder, 5 years, $87.5 million. Kyle Anderson with the Timberwolves. He was on the Grizzlies, but now he has a 2-year, $18 million deal with Minnesota. Malik Monk's 2-year, $19 million with the Kings. The Kings are trying to break their postseason drought. Just hired Warriors assistant coach Mike Brown to be their head coach.
Yeah,
and we have some baseball free agency.
Let's talk a little bit about Freddie Freeman and what happened there, because that's a yikes. And honestly, you kind of have to feel bad for the guy.
Yes, Freddie Freeman. His agent neglected to tell him about an offer from the Braves. He was a all-time Braves great. He won the World Series with them last year, but this his agent not telling him about the offer forced him to sign with the Dodgers. Yeah. And he wanted to return to Atlanta, but didn't know it was an option. He has now fired his agent. And his agent, however, denies that this happened.
Yeah, which I think it happened. That would be my guess.
Yes, I agree with you.
But then there's some big news out of college sports. USC and UCLA are moving to the Big Ten in 2024. What else do we know, Charlie?
Yes, Fox likely played a big part in the move. They have Big Ten TV rights. Because other than that, it doesn't make any sense. The rest of the Big Ten is playing in the Midwest. So I do think it's completely a money thing. and it really pushes the Pac-12 back towards their relevancy. They lose 2 of their best schools, and more schools might be poached by the Big 12.
Yeah.
They also want to add Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado.
Again, that's the Big 12, not the Big 10. The Big 10, though, they want to continue adding schools, so we'll see how that goes. On to Wimbledon. The quarterfinals have begun. In the men's draw, the matchups in the quarterfinals are David Goffin and Cameron Norrie, Novak Djokovic, the world number 1 and 20-time Grand Slam winner, versus Jannik Sinner. Christian Garin versus Nick Kyrgios, and Taylor Fritz versus Rafael Nadal, who's looking for already his third Slam of the year. And if he wins that, then he'll have a chance at the U.S. Open to get a Grand Slam, which has not been done in a very long time. In the women's draw, the quarterfinal matchups are Maria Bouzkova versus Ons Jabeur, Tatjana Maria versus Joel Niemeyer, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Ajla Tomljanovic versus Elena Rybakina. I have no clue how to pronounce most of these.
Apologize for the mispronunciations, everybody.
Yep. And Simona Halep versus Amanda Anisimova. Serena Williams also, Charlie, lost in the first round in her return to Wimbledon.
Yes.
Not great there. And the Women's French Open champion, Iga Swiatek, lost in the third round.
Yes. The Formula One British Grand Prix was this weekend. It was another race that had rain for part of qualifying, and the chaos really started on lap 1 with Pierre Gasly trying to split the 2 cars of George Russell and Guan Yu Zhou, which ended with Albon, Russell, and Guan Yu Zhou all out of the race. And actually, Zhou had a terrible accident where he flipped into the catch fence. Luckily, everyone was okay. No one was hurt, but it was a very scary incident. This caused the race to be red flagged, and the grid was brought back the way the race was intended to start. Carlos Sainz, with his first ever pole, converted it into his first ever win at the British Silverstone circuit this weekend. Max Verstappen, the current championship leader, got floor damage from the AlphaTauri of either Gasly or Tsunoda coming out of either turn 7 or turn 11. They couldn't figure out which one it was, and this caused him to have floor damage, which really ruined his race. And for the first time in his 1.5-year career so far, Mick Schumacher, you may recognize him, he's the son of Michael Schumacher, scored his first ever Formula One points for Haas. And actually, his teammate, Kevin Magnussen, came home in 10th to give Haas their first double points finish since 2019. The rest of the podium results were Sainz winning, Perez and the other Red Bull in second, and Lewis Hamilton in his home race picking up the third position. Leclerc was 4th, followed by Alonso in 5th, Norris in 6th, then 7th Verstappen, 8th Schumacher, 9th Vettel, and 10th Magnussen. Next week is a sprint race in Austria from the 8th to the 10th. Qualifying's on Friday. There's a short sprint race on Saturday, and the race is on Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time.
Yeah. Let's move on to something that, sorry, Charlie, is even less of a sport than Formula One is. Which is the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And Charlie left. Miki Sudo has regained the women's title in the hot dog contest. She downed 40 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes, which is just absolutely disgusting. Not quite as disgusting as what happened to the men's contest, though, where Joey Chestnut won by downing 63 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes, which is still short of his record of 76. It's his 15th title in this annual contest. And what was even more funny is that there was a protester who came up onto the stage during the contest, and Chestnut pretty much strangled him. All right, and finally, before we go, the 4th of July was on Monday, and I think that it's a good time to reflect on what America is. And to that end, I have a clip to play for you here.
At a time, especially at a time like this, not to buy into July 4th propaganda, land of the free. We're not free. why should we be celebrating independence when not all of us have independence? And that's why we're out here fighting for our reproductive rights, challenging the overturn of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court.
And I think it's important to reflect on really what does America represent now, right, Charlie? Because when you think about it, we have lost women's rights. Women no longer have a fundamental right. People in America, like you saw yesterday at that 4th of July parade, people are getting
shot.
Yeah, killed. Right? And frankly, I cannot think of anything more American than what happened yesterday at that 4th of July parade. Right? That seemed to be a perfect representation of what America is.
I heard it, and I turned on the news, and I wasn't surprised.
Yeah,
and that's
really
not good.
Think, what does America still represent?
Yes.
Right? Because no other country, no other big power is like us.
And I also really quickly just wanted to give you a little chunk from an article in El Pes, which is a Spanish newspaper. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But it's this. How can the U.S. pose as a beacon of freedom against the authoritarian darkness of Russia or other such countries when it denies its own citizens basic human rights?
Yeah. Well,
I think that quote is quite interesting because it's
and, I mean, it's something to think about, right? Because there's what America claims to represent, which is, right, freedom. And then there's what we actually are. And it's shameful, honestly. And on that note, that's going to end our episode. Make sure to subscribe. We have new episodes every Tuesday, available everywhere that you listen to podcasts. We actually do not have a show next week, though we'll have some announcements when we come back. And check out bloopers if you haven't already. Also follow us on Twitter at C&C Talks Podcast and submit your questions at anchor.fm/CC Talks. For our producer Morris, Zach, our production designer, and Drake, the co-writer, thanks so much for listening. I'm Colin. Charlie is somewhere. We're not quite sure where. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Goodbye, everybody.